Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Sahil?
Good. Can you hear my volume okay?
Yeah.
Great. Getting the link for our class. Elizabeth, how's it going?
What was that?
I was just saying hi to Elizabeth.
Oh, hi.
You first time joining in this webinar series?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Have you started the Career Launchpad? Did you make an account yet?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just been
glad you
hard
made it.
to manage time with finals and all. So
Completely understand.
yeah.
Are you in finals right now?
Yeah. So next week I think is officially finals, but we're kind of like
Some classes start early.
right.
Cool.
You can, Elizabeth, you can access the course by clicking on the links in the chat. And I'll explain everything towards the end of the presentation. But glad to have you.
Okay. Yeah.
Haley.
Hi.
Eric, do we have anyone else from NDNU admin side, Erica or anyone else joining today?
I haven't heard anything differently. I assumed that they would be here, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can wait a couple more minutes.
Anyone have any fun shelter-in-place holiday plans?
I'm catching up on some reading. I got this book on Amazon. It's about Elon Musk, so look forward to reading that. But other than that, just in my room, as always.
Nice.
What about you guys?
Well, my parents and I have started putting up the Christmas tree and stuff, so that's been fun. And we
Nice.
got to dig through boxes of ornaments and stuff. So
Cool.
My Christmas
Mine has been a
is canceled.
process for like a month. What was that, Allie?
My Christmas is canceled this year.
Oh,
Yeah.
No. What does that mean?
Oh no, we're just not gonna meet up with anyone outside of the house because we want to be safe.
Sure.
And we have a newborn in the house. I mean, a newborn cousin, so we don't want to get the baby sick.
Right. Well, that's exciting. That's exciting plans in itself, is having a first holiday with a baby. My family just moved into a huge house, and it's obnoxious. They have this huge backyard with like a walk-in pool and like tiki hut barbecue and a fire pit. And I'm like, y'all did this after I've moved out of the house for over 10 years. Like, that's awesome.
And now that you're gone.
Right. I've been gone for a while now. It's been, 13 years now since I've been home.
Hopefully they got a good, did they do that partially because the market is down right now, or they were already planning to do that?
So oddly enough, they've been trying to sell their previous house since like January.
Oh,
and they've been looking, and right now the market is very scarce for available homes. And they have a particular area that they wanted to move to, and even like when you narrow that search down to like a smaller area, it's harder to get anything.
Yeah.
They were in escrow for 3 different houses prior to that, and everything just kind of fell through. And this was kind of like their dream come true home. So it's all single story. It's like a 6-bedroom house. Like, you don't need 6 bedrooms, but
Especially now.
Oh,
that
what
you're
city
out
do
there.
they live?
what was that, Allie?
What city do they live in?
They just moved to Murrieta, like on the way to like Temecula and San Diego.
Great area.
Yeah.
Eric's like, I could have had a
They're-
bedroom and a personal office.
Well, I mean, they're gonna have a guest room, and you know what's also awesome is they're really close to all the wineries now, so we don't have to
Right.
drive as far to those. But now, anytime I go to visit, that adds on a whole hour to my drive, so I'm not really excited about that.
Do NDNU students of age, of course, do they ever make trips out to Napa, or not that frequently?
Not through us, just because. Well, I don't know why. They just never have. At my previous institution that I worked at, we would do like weekend trips and like shuttle students places, but we had a larger school and a larger budget.
Gotcha.
But we're kind of small and limited as to what we can do.
Sure.
That, and I think like the whole like drinking thing is a little prohibited.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of overage students, you know,
Sure.
or legal age students.
We have Laura joining us.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Hey, Laura. Eric, you want to give it a couple of minutes, or do you want to go ahead and dive in? Either way is fine with me. Can give it, wait until 3:10. You guys want?
Yeah, let's give it a couple more minutes just to see.
Elizabeth, question for you. And Allie also, is this your first time, or you've been on the webinars before for Career Launchpad?
I think this
So
is my
this-
third one.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Elizabeth, curious how you found out about the Launchpad program and what made you want to join the webinar today.
Yeah, so I actually got like a package from the university, which was yeah. So I was looking at the flyers and stuff, and I was like, oh, you know, I've been meaning to, you know, do some like career stuff for like when I graduate, which is going to be after next semester. So yeah, I was like, you know, I should start getting stuff like that done. So
Yeah. Eric put a lot of thought and effort into the packages, so glad to hear.
yeah,
So glad you got it. I'm so glad it worked.
yeah.
Had you heard about the Career Launchpad prior to this, or was it just the care package that kind of alerted you?
I can't remember. I feel like I might have heard of it, but I hadn't like heard like the details and stuff about it. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Sahil. What were you saying?
I was gonna say, what did I say? Oh yeah, so since we have a couple of minutes up top, and then also I don't think the presentation will take the entire time, do you have any specific questions about your career, or you're just kind of curious to figure out where to get started?
For right now, I'm just kind of curious about getting started.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Eric, if we had a chance to post the previous webinars, but definitely once they're up on the NDNU site, this is the 5th one. We did 4 other ones. So definitely in your spare time, you can watch it at 2x speed and just kind of bring this together because they definitely make sense sequentially if you go through them like that.
Okay. So would it be, because I saw that there's like the links on the page.
Yes.
So would I just click the like Zoom link again, or?
Oh, so Eric, do we have a NDNU domain where the webinars are uploaded, or is that still in progress?
I actually haven't checked in a while, but they should be, if not already, going up on the career webpage soon.
Okay.
So you were in the newsletter that you got. One of them, they should have had the link to the career services page.
Oh, okay.
So just, I guess, stay tuned. Something we're going to start doing as well is sending out regular emails to you all, separate from the student newsletter, from career services, just to inform you about the Career Launchpad and other stuff going on.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So while we're in this, I'll check on that and get back to you at the end.
Okay. Thanks.
But yeah, for now, I've linked the course in the chat as well as our Facebook group, so you can join both of those.
Okay.
Ali, curious if you've got the chance to watch any of the course yet?
Yeah, I did actually.
How's that going? Are you finding it helpful?
Yeah, I'm finding it helpful. I'm actually trying to look for internships right now
Oh,
for
cool.
next summer. So it's been a great resource.
And what's your kind of career hypothesis, or what are you trying to do career-wise?
Right now, I'm trying to do something in health education.
Okay.
I think you remember, but I was talking about public health before.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But right after I graduate, I want to do something in like community health education.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Awesome. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Just as a reminder to everyone, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to NDNU after the fact, and we will upload it to a website for everyone's reference. Laura, did you want to say something?
No. Sorry, I'm just clicking around. I'm sitting in front of a window, so I have like a huge glare.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, let's get into the presentation, and then there will be some time for Q&A at the very end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to make sure that mine is pinned, and then spotlight for everyone, and move mine down. Okay. Eric, would you please confirm if you can see my my selfie image on the bottom right as well as the slide?
Yes.
Awesome. Let's dive in. All right, so today's focus, this is the fifth part of our Career Launchpad series. And today's focus is going to be on applying to jobs by hacking the application process. And we'll talk about what that means. So a couple of agenda items. I'm going to give a brief introduction about myself for those of you who don't know me, talk about the actual presentation and the content that I just mentioned, and then wrap up with a conclusion about how you can make the Career Launchpad program have incredible impact on your life and your career aspirations as a college student. So our goal to you today is quite simple. Number one, understand why submitting a resume online is not enough to land a job in today's world, and understand how to apply to jobs in a way that actually gets you noticed by recruiters. So I think some of this might strike you as counterintuitive. For those of you who have applied to jobs before and haven't heard back from recruiters, you can probably relate to some of the stuff that I talk about today. So why don't we go ahead and get started then. So a quick background about myself and Rohan. Between us, we have over now 14 years of collective experience helping students like you land their careers and launch their careers both in college and after college. I personally went to UCLA and then started off in management consulting, and then ultimately worked at Discovery Channel, and now I work at Netflix. So really fun career in entertainment. My brother went to Berkeley. He had a couple of really cool internships and ultimately ended up at LinkedIn, where he is now a product manager for the job seeker platform. So any kind of job searching tool you use on LinkedIn, that is Rohan's product. And so we kind of have some cool insider knowledge on how all this stuff is playing out in, you know, more of the professional working world, let alone for college students. So really cool to have him involved as well. So quick brief bio about myself here. I know some people have already seen this. I'm going to go quite quickly. Growing up, I was a marching band nerd, was a saxophonist, and spent all my time focused on music. And as a result, didn't really spend too much time in the classroom. So when I applied to college in high school, didn't get into the university that I wanted to and got this rejection letter. But a couple months later, after getting this letter, the music director at UCLA saw a clip of me on YouTube playing the saxophone. And he was like, hey, our marching band at UCLA could use a saxophonist. You're pretty decent. Do you want to come in through the back door? And that's kind of how I got into the university, through the appeals process through the music program. Now, that was definitely a blessing and a curse. I'm sure many of you can relate to your first day on campus at NDNU and being sort of intimidating by all the students that are around you, right? For me, it was certainly intimidating, and it was this immense feeling of imposter syndrome, because I was surrounded by, you know, hundreds of students in this giant lecture hall that all on paper were smarter than me and more likely to succeed. And I was just thinking, forget about finding a job. How am I going to just not flunk out? And how am I going to survive? And that first year, my freshman year, I really struggled. It wasn't a fun year. I spent too much time freaking out in the library, taking classes that didn't interest me. And I kind of had an epiphany my freshman year summer. I was like, you know what? I'm right. I'm not supposed to be on this campus. I got it on a fluke, but how would a student act if they were placed on their dream college campus for just 24 hours? What are the things they would do and how would they try to experience life? And that really changed my perspective to, instead of me versus everyone else, how about I try to learn from everyone else and really soak up all their knowledge and inspiration? So as a result, my sophomore year, I started joining a lot more student groups. I started leading some of those student groups. They were like business clubs on campus. Started being more involved on campus and really got career focused because I saw that I had a lot more fun learning outside the classroom than in the classroom, which many of you can probably relate to. And so my junior year, I applied to a consulting internship and got it. And it was listed on Glassdoor's top 25 toughest companies to interview with in the country that year. So all the things that I learned about recruiting the hard way have been battle tested and pressure tested in some of the most competitive environments out there. And you'll see LEK, you can see my mouse, right below Teach for America, which is another great program. So really cool to have gone through that experience. And that's where I ended up starting my career after undergrad. And this is a fun email that I like to share. When I had my junior year internship training, it was a nationwide training for all the other interns at LEK. I got this email in around May, right before finals, before heading off to the summer. And I just looked at some of the other email addresses of other students and I was like, wow, like how did I go from a marching band nerd, not studying in school, to being surrounded by people from MIT, Cornell, Northwestern, Stanford? Like, this is really cool. And what I learned is academic performance is by no means an indicator of how successful you could be in the real world and the kind of people that you can surround yourself with. So kind of fun lesson that I like to share here. So basically, Rowan and I have figured out the stuff the hard way so that you don't have to. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation today. So again, we're going to cover first, understanding why submitting a resume online isn't enough to land a job in today's world. So some of you have seen this slide before. It's my favorite slide because it hammers down the point of what's wrong with the recruiting process. Today's recruiting system is completely broken. According to Glassdoor, the average job posting gets 250 applications. From that, we know that 4 to 6 students get an interview. And of course, only 1 student gets the offer. That's a 0.4% offer rate. That's pretty terrible, right? And by the way, this isn't for any sort of brand name company. If it's like a Google or an Oracle, which I know recruits heavily from NDNU, or any kind of brand name company, you can expect 3x, 4x the number of applications. So it really goes down to like a 0.1% offer rate. Not a fun place to be. And I think the idea that you can format your resume, you can align the bullet points in the right way that you would kind of get past the system, I think that's not focusing on the big problem. And the big problem is in today's world with online applications and just applying your resume to 20 different jobs in a second, the application pool is getting very, very saturated and inflated. And as a result, it's harder and harder to stand out with just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, which is your resume. And to that end, we know that these days, the average amount of time that a recruiter spends on a resume is just 7 seconds. So resumes are simply no longer as impactful as they once were, simply due to the large number of applications every job posting gets and how technology has enabled us to automate everything, which I'll talk about later on in this presentation, in terms of having software and algorithms digitally read your resume and scan for keywords and do all this, interesting stuff that really makes it hard for you to communicate your personal story and why someone should take a bet on you. And for those of you who have seen some of these previous webinars, you'll know that especially at that entry level, undergrad level, even if you're a graduate student just entering the working world, when you're looking for that entry level job, all you're doing is asking someone to invest in you, asking someone to take a bet on you. You don't really have any tangible skill sets to offer. You have tons of upward potential, but someone has to see that in you. And it's really tough to communicate that in a resume when you don't have a lot of prior experience. So to that end, your personal story just cannot fit onto one page. And it's really important that you network, some of the topics that we talked about in previous webinars, that you go out and meet current employees of the company, go to any kind of info sessions or employer events that are around your area. NDNU is in the hotbed of technology in Silicon Valley. Obviously, I know things are very difficult with coronavirus, but that doesn't discount the fact that you all are going to school in a very, very helpful zip code compared to many other students around the country, over 4 million students. Not nearly a lot of them are in the types of zip codes where you have access and proximity to a lot of really cool companies. And that's important because proximity is what allows you to share your personal story and meet with people a lot easier. So successful job applicants are ones that get recruiters and hiring managers to truly understand their potential and their personal journey, their enthusiasm for the open role, and why they want to work for the company. So again, it's going from that piece of paper to really being able to tell your story in an informational interview, in a coffee chat, even through a cover letter, things that you really have to do in today's world to stand out. And so there are a number of steps you can take to help you stand out from the endless pile of resumes that are there for every job posting that you see. Let's go ahead and dive into the second part, which is, okay, now that we understand why submitting an online resume isn't enough to land a job in today's world, let's talk about how do you actually apply the right way to get you noticed. So for every job you apply to, there are 5 steps you should follow to make sure you stand out from others. Chances are today, if you've ever applied to a job, you've probably just uploaded your resume and clicked submit through the job portal or through Handshake or whatever. And you haven't really done some of these extra steps because it takes a lot of work. And I think the approach that students often take is, I'm just going to apply to 100 different positions and hope that 2 or 3 of them call back because it's a law of large numbers. And it's like, well, that's definitely an approach, but I'm sure it's frustrating to try to find that many job postings and just always apply and get constantly defeated when recruiters don't respond or tell you that you're not moving forward. And how can you actually increase that conversion rate from applications to interviews? And that's what this process does. It increases your conversion rate from applications to interviews by creating additional touch points throughout the process. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about process number 1. Or step number 1 rather, which is reaching out to a current employee. So at this point, you have noticed some type of job posting online that catches your interest. So here's the first thing that you would do. Use LinkedIn to find a potential list of employees to reach out to. If you've already met someone through a campus recruiting event, or maybe you have a mutual friend or family friend, you can reach out to them as well. In a previous module, we talked about how to leverage the most out of LinkedIn. This is also covered in the Career Launchpad training program, which we'll talk about at the end. So if you don't know how to use LinkedIn, you don't have a profile, definitely watch those resources because you need to have a LinkedIn profile to be able to recruit very, very well. Number 2, reach out to each employee one at a time, not all at once. So let's say you want to work for Oracle. I wouldn't pull down a database of all, however many employees they have, a couple thousand, or maybe even more than that. Obviously, that's not kind of the smart way to do it. What you would want to do is try to find current employees on LinkedIn who are working in the departments that you're interested in working for. And if you have a list of, let's say, 4 or 5 people that work in that team, reach out to them one at a time. So take a name, reach out to them on LinkedIn or email, and wait a week. And if they don't respond, then you can move on to the next person. You want to avoid, sending too many messages to the same team or same company, because it'll just seem like you're wasting everyone's time. And really, you don't need to have conversations with more than 1 or 2 people at the company. I think any more than that, and you're just taking more of their time. And so the point is, when you reach out, is to ask for an informational interview. And again, a previous webinar covered how to conduct a stellar informational interview if you don't know what that is or how to do it. And so if possible, another bonus thing that you can do is to try to find an NDNU alumni who work at the company you're applying to, as they'll certainly have a higher response rate. So I think we talked about in the previous webinar, if you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn, just using that DM feature, InMail as they call it, for every 5 people that you reach out to, you should probably hope to hear back once. So like 1 person out of 5 will say, sure, I'd be happy to chat. If you reach out to alumni, that should double. So it should be 2 out of every 5 should say, sure. Now, most of the time in both of these scenarios, whether it's 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5, note that the majority of the time you're not going to hear back, and that's totally fine. It's not a knock on you. It's just the fact that you're cold reaching out to someone who doesn't know you, and they might be too busy, or they might not want to talk to you, or for whatever reason. The point is, if you can establish some type of commonality with someone, like they went to a former university or you're from the same hometown, that creates this sort of commonality that makes that person want to help you even more. So if possible, NDNU alumni at the company that you want to work for can be great people to reach out to. And then lastly, there's a really cool tool called Hunter.io. Hunter.io. And that's basically a website where you can reverse engineer people's email addresses. So if you know the company that they work at, then typically if it's a larger company, for example, at Netflix, you can type in anyone's name. You could type in my name into this tool and it would figure out my Netflix email address based on the standard formatting of that company. So like first letter, first name, entire last name at netflix.com, for example. You can do this, a lot of salespeople do it. I will say, sometimes it's a bit off-putting to people because they're like, how the heck did this person find my email address? So I wouldn't necessarily say it's the preferred way. I would still say LinkedIn is preferred because your information is public. People know that. So it's not too weird to reach out to people on LinkedIn, even if you're not a connection. So Hunter.io, helpful tool if you, or let's say you finish an interview and you forgot to get their contact information to send a thank you note. Hunter.io is a great tool to kind of track that down as a last minute resort, but stick to LinkedIn if you can. So taking a step back here, I think the first part of applying to a job is trying to get in contact with someone. And the point is to conduct an informational interview to learn more about the company, the team, the work, why the current employee decided to join that team and any advice they have for you. And then hopefully ultimately ask for a referral and keep them involved with your recruiting process so that they actually submit a referral on your behalf so that your resume actually gets read. And I'll talk about that at the very, very last step, but just to give you a picture of where this all is headed. So after we reach out and have a conversation with the current employee, the second step is actually preparing your resume. And the second step is called beat the resume algorithm. And so there are two types of algorithms that your resume will need to beat. Number one, a machine algorithm. And these are basically software systems that take all the PDF files that students submit for the job, and it crunches it down into one file, and then it scans like, okay, whose resume has the highest match rate of the words in the job description, and it's basically trying to do like a matching exercise. And the logic is, if a student has a lot of matching words or buzzwords or skills that the job description requires, chances are they are probably going to be a good person to interview. So that's one type of machine algorithm that's out there. And a lot of bigger companies use that get so many applications. The other type of algorithm is what I call the human algorithm. So even though this might not be a machine, if it's like a small mom and pop business, you can sure as heck bet that the recruiter or the hiring manager still has those buzzwords in their head. And with those buzzwords, they're reading your resume and looking for kind of similar experiences to what the job description called for. So whether it's a machine or a human, you're dealing with this verbiage matching algorithm that you kind of need to figure out how to deal with. And so both algorithms are essentially trying to understand if you have relevant experience for the open role. And the key to beating the algorithm and getting your resume into the must interview stack is to have a high match rate of keywords between your resume and the job description that you're applying for. And so to prepare your resume, study the job description you're applying to and ensure that you're describing your past experiences in a way that uses the same verbiage as the job description. So pay attention to particular skill sets, whether it's Excel, customer service, if it's a particular healthcare type of thing, what keywords or buzzwords they use in the industry, what tools they require to use, whether it's Photoshop or Microsoft Office or whatever, and specific tasks that the job description requires. And make sure some of that is reflected in your resume if you have those types of experiences. Now, obviously, it's totally okay if you don't, because you're recently out of undergrad, and so you're not expected to have too much experience. But for those of you who are knowledgeable about what you want to do, and you have had time to do an internship or two in that field before you apply for a full-time job, definitely take a scrub through your resume and make sure it basically approximates the job description. And then also, you likely won't need to create a new resume for every job you apply to. Now, I know some students might freak out and say, oh, so for like 20 different jobs, I need to have 20 different resumes. Not quite. There should be similarity across all jobs within a particular career path, right? So for those of you that want to get into healthcare education, chances are the different types of jobs within healthcare education, as long as they're the same kind of function or same type of career, they're not going to be too different company to company in terms of what you need to do. If you want to be a digital marketer somewhere, they're going to require the same skill sets as the digital marketer somewhere else, largely speaking. So the good part is you probably only need to do this once or twice and just do a check on the job description to make sure that you have those buzzwords in there, but it's a good check to do, and it can really help you beat both types of resume algorithms. So the next step is to personalize your cover letter. So we have a specific cover letter module. We also have a specific resume module in the Career Launchpad that teaches you everything you need to know about building your resume. But for the cover letter, we also have a module there. And even if a job posting doesn't require a cover letter, consider writing one anyways and attaching it to your resume or emailing it to a recruiter as an email. Here's the paradox with the cover letter. 90% of the time, cover letters are never read. But the 10% of the time that they are, they can have huge impact on your conversion rate, because that means the recruiters are probably on the fence about letting you have an interview, and any other information they can get about you can help them make a better decision. So you really, really want to get in the practice of having and writing great cover letters to express your interests. And even when it's optional, sending a recruiter an email with a quick 3-paragraph summary of why you want to work for that company can be a really, really good way to strike a first impression. So another cover letter tip is you can name drop anyone you've already met at the company, whether it's through on-campus recruiting events or informational interviews that you've done in step 1. And the purpose of this is to quickly get a recruiter's attention. So imagine that you have a cover letter, and in the first sentence you say, hi, recruiter, I'm reaching out to apply to XYZ position for a number of reasons, one of which being my amazing conversation with John Smith, who is a senior director at the group that I'm interviewing for. Like, that is a great way to get someone's attention. So name drop anyone that you've come into contact with, that you've had a good conversation with, and that'll quickly get the recruiter's attention of, oh, this isn't just another student, this is someone that actually knows someone at the company, right? And the goal of your cover letter should be to express why you want to work for the company you're applying to. The more specific, the better. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on the cover letter, but basically we have a cover letter module in the Launchpad program. And in that module, you'll learn a cover letter is simply 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is just your intro, why you're applying to the job. The second paragraph is taking 1 or 2 experiences from your resume and bridging that gap between what you've done and what the job description requires. So based on 1 or 2 experiences that you've had, why do you think you're uniquely qualified for the position? That's the second paragraph. And the third paragraph of a cover letter is spending 4 to 6 sentences talking about why you want to work for that company specifically. It needs to be really specific. And in fact, before you ever send a cover letter, I encourage all of my clients and students to do a test called the Control, Find, Replace test. So let's say you wanted to work for a beauty company like Sephora. Now, before sending your cover letter for Sephora, you would control, find, and replace on your Word doc processor or Google Docs, take out Sephora and put Ulta, or put in another makeup company. And if that cover letter still reads true, it's not a good cover letter. It's too generic. It needs to be very, very specific. For those of you who can remember back to applying to colleges, think of it the same way. You can't just copy paste your college admissions essays across the board and apply to 30 different universities. Ideally, you'd have a specific one for each university. So I think the trick with cover letters is try to get their attention by name dropping someone you've talked to, and then secondarily make it as specific as possible so that if you replace the company name with someone else, it just wouldn't make any sense. Now, second to last, the fourth step is to actually, now that we have talked to someone, we've had our resume, we've done our cover letter, now we can actually apply. And there's a couple of ways here. In terms of online and applying using your computer, a couple of best practices here. You want to keep all your files organized on your computer. You want to have a unique folder for every job that you apply to, containing the resume you use and the cover letter, and maybe even a copy of the job description that you can save down from their website. The worst thing that you can do, and I've almost done this so many times, I know some of my clients have actually done this, is send the wrong cover letter to a company because you misnamed a file or you attached a wrong document, and that can ruin your chances like that alone. So it's important to stay really organized with the way that you apply to jobs, and just keep folders, very simple, on your computer. Now, another pro tip is to track all the positions you apply to in a spreadsheet so that you can monitor your progress. Again, we talk about this in the Launchpad program, but it can be a simple spreadsheet of like, here's a job, here's the date that I applied, here's kind of the specific title, and here's where I applied for the job, either on like Handshake or LinkedIn or some other place. So kind of, I think the theme of these first 4 bullet points is to stay organized as heck when applying to a job online. And lastly, in addition to applying online, if you guys want bonus credit, you can print your resume and cover letter on nice paper. You can find resume paper at any online or office supply store and mail it to the recruiter's office address. Now, perhaps this might be less applicable during COVID, but people are still getting their office mail. And I think it's just another cool way to differentiate yourself in terms of being a student applicant. And kind of, again, when you have like a stack of 300 PDF files of different students and you're the only one that did a handwritten letter or resume, or like a paper resume rather, that can be a great idea to stand out. Another good idea is to hand write a cover letter, because that means someone is actually going to take the time to read it. How many people get handwritten letters in today's world? Certainly almost never, I would imagine. So if you do want to take that time to hand write a cover letter using regular computer paper and then your actual handwriting, that can be a great way to do it too. So a couple of extra tips. Again, the point here is just trying to do everything that you can to stand out, in addition to just applying to online, which everyone will do otherwise. And the last step here is to get flagged by an employee, recruiter, or your career services department. So after applying yourself, reach back out to any current employee you've met and let them know that you've applied. Remember, I mentioned this in part one. When you conduct those informational interviews, and let's say you had a great conversation, you can reach back out to them when you see a job that you want to apply to, and you can say in your message, and you can be vulnerable and simply say, and you can literally use this word for word, as you would imagine, John, in today's world, it's harder than ever to stand out from other applicants and the huge pile of resumes every job posting gets. To that end, I was wondering if you feel I've demonstrated ample curiosity and enthusiasm for the role, and if so, if you'd be willing to submit a referral on my behalf for my application. Ideally, I'd really like to ensure my application is considered by the recruiter, as I'm very much interested in the role. So you can literally take that paragraph, copy paste it, and to whoever you talk to for the informational interview, and see if they're willing to just go on their backend system. And any employee at most major companies can just go in and say, oh, like, yeah, look out for this student or look out for this person. I've met them and they're great, and we should definitely interview them. So that's kind of that's the biggest thing that you can do to make sure that your application gets read and that you have a good chance of getting interviewed. So if we talk about some of those high leverage moments, it doesn't matter almost, the way that you format your resume bullet points, or even kind of how you craft your bullet points. Doing these kind of things can go a long way into getting your resume in the yes pile. So I think the first part there is trying to reach out to any current employee that you've had the interaction with. And then lastly, you can also try reaching out to a university administrator. So asking them if they can reach out to the employer on your behalf as kind of a bonus recommendation for your application. So imagine asking someone at NDNU's, professional development or career services development, or even student life office on your behalf, because an email coming from a student life administrator to an employer means a lot more than just a student who is already looking for a job, just trying to vouch for themselves. And another great way you can do this is by asking a professor who is reasonably well known in their field for a particular topic that's related to the career, and asking them if they wouldn't mind writing a letter to the employer for the specific position there. So that's kind of the 5-step process. As a reminder, this definitely takes time. So just kind of reviewing the checklist for each job that you apply to. Step 1 would be reaching out to current employees and conducting at least one informational interview per job that you apply to. Step number 2 would be beating the resume algorithms by ensuring your resume uses similar verbiage as a job description. Step 3, personalizing your cover letter and explaining your enthusiasm for the company. Step 4 would be submitting your application online and offline. And then step 5 finally is to get someone to flag your application or referral from a current employee. Those are the 5 steps that you should be doing for every job that you apply to. And yes, this process is much harder than just clicking upload and submit to hundreds of job postings. But if you can follow through each step, your conversion rate from application to interview will dramatically rise. And we promise that this has been true for students across the country. So yes, it's a long process, but if you can do it for the jobs that you really care about, you're really going to be maximizing your chances and getting away from that 0.4% acceptance rate that we talked about earlier. So with that, I wanted to wrap up and quickly talk about the Launchpad program, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So at this point, you have 2 options. You can try to go it alone and spend months figuring out how to recruit and put into practice some of the stuff we talked about today. Or as I mentioned before throughout the slides, we have a program that specifically teaches, from Rohan and I's experience, how to tackle all of these steps and get multiple offers in a very competitive recruiting environment. And remember, it takes an average student about 3 to 6 months to find a job. We can get you there in just a couple of weeks following our unique process. And so at this point, that's where the Career Launchpad comes in. And so the Career Launchpad is basically a course that shows you how to land a job or internship in any industry as an undergraduate or even graduate student in just 42 days. It's over 20 modules of everything you need to know. It's an online course. There's plenty of behind the shoulder demonstrations and templates and things like that. And here's a quick sample of what we cover. You know, everything from how to create a networking strategy to writing a resume and cover letter, to really, really deep dive modules with Rohan on how to craft a great interview response to some common questions. And then I have a full almost hour-long module just on negotiating your salary alone. And we had students use this actually last week, and they got a $5,000 to I think $7,000 increase in their salary just by using this negotiation technique. So a lot of really, really cool modules in here, and then some that are coming as well. So we have students buying this program every day who are not at NDNU for around $400, but NDNU has decided to make an investment in students and make this program available for just $0, 100% off. It's available just for you. And I think the challenge is really signing up for it and taking it because it's available for free. I know sometimes that we have so many things going on with finals and the holidays coming up, but what better time than, you know, taking a break for a couple of days during the holidays and really thinking about your career coming out of 2020 and heading into hopefully a post-COVID world. So all the techniques here definitely apply to a COVID environment. In fact, they work better because they're kind of immune to any kind of financial or biological issue that we have in the marketplace. It really gets to the foundational truths of finding a job. So to get started now, you can click on the link in the chat. I know some of you don't have course access, so go ahead and click on that link and you should be able to sign up for the course for free. And you know, if you're still on the fence, it's okay. We routinely get a bunch of great responses from students saying that it's been super helpful, very actionable as well. I think my favorite one is at the top here saying, you know, I'd actually rate it 9 out of 10 low key because I want the information for myself and not anyone else. So pretty funny. And, you know, I think people like how Rohan and I are pretty straight to the point, no flowery language or BS. We kind of are really truthful and based on our experiences recruiting for ourselves. And obviously, we also get a lot of really fun messages on LinkedIn from people who have taken our course and have achieved really, really cool career outcomes. And we look forward to having you join that as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and leave this up here as I minimize my window and open it up for Q&A.
Thank you, Sahil. I had a question. I know that you talked about cross-referencing the job description with the resume, but don't laugh, but I saw a video on TikTok that was like, there's website resources available for individuals who are job searching that they can upload the job description and the resume, and it would actually cross-reference and tell you what percentage rate it kind of matches. Do you know of any of the websites that would be best utilized in that situation, or one that you would recommend better than another one?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that those existed. I think I'm looking at one right now, JobScan. There's a couple.
Yeah, that was. I just did a quick Google search when you're talking about it because it really, reminded me about it. But I was just wondering if you knew of one that was better than the other.
Yeah, I actually haven't. I don't know of too many of them. I haven't used them myself, but it seems like there's a couple of really good tools. I mean, the technology to do that is quite simple, which is why there's so many out there. I would just go with the first couple of links that show up and try maybe 2 or 3 of them and see which one you like. Also, even without those tools, just your human eye, right? You can read the job description and see how it matches the resume. But thanks for sharing that, Eric. I'll actually add that to my curriculum and my approach because glad to see these tools that are out there. But definitely recommend using it just to see. It's a fun exercise, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Elizabeth, any questions about what we discussed or anything about your career in general?
Yeah, so I was kind of wondering, so I'm planning on doing an internship first before I just jump into like careers stuff. I was wondering if you think it is helpful to like have the internship experience as well, or if it matters or how much it matters, I guess.
You're saying, do I get an internship first and then look for a full-time job, or do I just go straight to finding a full-time job?
Yeah, basically.
What type of career are you trying to go after? Do you have any ideas?
So for right now, I'm thinking of doing like so I'm an English major, so I'm thinking of doing like either like maybe newspaper or magazine editing, or yeah, just like maybe journalism. I'm thinking about that too a little bit. So
Yeah. So I think the interesting part is for journalism and for editing, there's actually quite a few, to my understanding, a lot of companies that actively look for and hire recent graduates. So in this situation, there might be a lot of full-time roles that you can apply to, and simply the requirement is like a bachelor's degree, English major. They don't need to have like 6 internships under your belt. I would say though, I think given the job market as well, it might be difficult to find those opportunities. So in the meantime, I think it would be a great way to kind of get some experience, and by looking at internships as well. So I think my recommendation to you on that question would be, let's scan the different let's make a list of the different type of companies and journals that you'd want to work for, or magazines. And from that list of, let's say, 10 magazines or newspapers or whatever they are, or news outlets, let's try to figure out, do they have any kind of entry-level job postings, and what are the requirements there? Is it just a bachelor's degree, or is it actual kind of experience? And definitely apply to them if they're kind of just looking for a bachelor's degree. But in addition, let's also look at internships that are available, because I do think that whether it's while you're in school or even this coming summer, I do think a great 10 to 12-week internship can really kind of give you a lot more clarity on what specifically you want to do, without having to commit to that full-time job.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Great. What else? Do you have any other questions? I know you're probably thinking about this, a lot of stuff for the first time, so it's kind of a lot to take in, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was that's the only question that I really thought of for right now, but like, yeah.
And the Launchpad program will help you for sure,
Yeah.
landing whether it's an internship or a full-time job. So awesome. Laura, anything from you?
Yeah, I had 2 questions. The first was about the resume. I'm sorry, my phone is like exploding right now. Was about the resume, the keyword match. 5 year, whatever ago, it was a quote unquote fine line where you wanted to pass the machine to get all your keywords matched as much as possible, but not repeat the job announcement so much that it is quite obvious, like that you went out of your way to match all your words. So is that still true, or do people who you pass the machine and you get to an in-person reader, they're okay with seeing like exact same words again, or do they still expect a degree of finesse in maneuvering the,
Yeah, so you're definitely right. I actually do remember when I was in college, there were some students that actually, funny enough, when these were just coming out like 10 years ago, they literally copy pasted the job description into certain parts of the resume, like entire bullets, and they got through. And I was like, wow, people really aren't reading this stuff. So to your point, that was real like 10 years ago. I definitely don't advise that, because, A, it's a little bit lying about your experience, right? If you're just copy pasting and you haven't really done that. And B, to your point, I think when it does come time for someone to look at your resume, even if it gets past the machine part of it, they're going to look for context and a story about yourself. And if it just seems like you haven't done anything really impressive, but then all of a sudden you have one bullet point on like word for word, you've done something that the job description calls for, it's going to read kind of weird and disingenuous. I think it's also important to understand that the intent with the advice there is to just use the same sort of words and understand what types of skill sets and tools the job description is requiring, and make sure your past experiences reflect that, right? It's kind of in the same way when you're in an interview and someone asks you, what makes you think that you're qualified for this position? You should kind of be able to say and talk in the way that they talk about the position, right? It's just kind of how you would sell yourself as a good salesperson. So kind of the same thing here. It's not necessarily the idea that you need to copy paste specific words, but it's more so understanding what are the kind of skill sets and foundational tools you need to do well in this job and be a great candidate, and make sure that if you have the experience, that you're putting your best foot forward by making sure that it's being phrased in the same way or a similar way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was thinking more the opposite though. I've got my generic and sorry, and the motive of my question is that I give advice to students. Sorry, I'm staff at
Yeah, that's fine.
so I give advice to students about writing their resume. So my question, so that's a little bit of part of the motive of my question, but so you've got your generic, you wrote it, whatever, you wrote your resume in business class and you turned in an assignment or whatever, you worked really hard on this resume for this one company, but you want to take advantage of it and send it out as many times as possible. So you go through, you've got your line items, they're perfectly formatted, they're perfectly stated. Now you've got X other job. And so now you're going to pull out all those keywords and stick it into the resume that you've worked a long time on. Do you take the words, whatever, leadership and responsibility, computer skills, or do you make them a little bit, do you just take those words out and replace them for the ones that you had previously used, or do you give them synonyms? Do you give them whatever? I mean,
Yeah, so I think if the question is, if it called for, like, let's say Microsoft Office, do you need to find another synonym for Microsoft Office?
No, not Microsoft Office as a keyword, but like leadership, responsibility, initiative, go-getter, like go-getter. Is that a skill or is that a character?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I would say if it's a skill, then you want to use it word for word. If it's an adjective, you probably want to stay away from that and more so talk about that in the interview. And the reason why is because in resumes, you want to avoid using adjectives because they're subjective. You want to use objective descriptions of what you've done. And by doing that, you'll kind of, I get the idea of like making a resume sound like you're the culture of the company. But really the point of that and where you should kind of emote that culture is in the interview and in the cover letter when you're talking about it in less of a formal tone than a resume, right?
Okay.
That'd be my guidance there.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
And did you have a second question?
Yes, I did. Okay, so this is more on the personal level. You give really great advice to first time, so college grads in the job market. How, I mean, just like percentage wise or whatever, how much would that apply for mid-management? So the get your foot out the door, the cold, whatever, the emails, the recruiting, the networking, the building those relationships, and the I can't remember some of the other topics that you brought about, which I really appreciate. We're quite insightful.
Yeah. And when you say mid-management, can you give me, let's call it a years of experience range?
5, 6.
Okay. 95%. I think that the difference there, and by the way, Rohan and I both have clients, a lot of clients in their mid-20s to early 30s. So we're kind of with them through the process. But to answer your question more specifically, the one thing that changes is, and Elizabeth, this is even good information for you, is when you're applying to a job or internship as a college student or recent graduate, again, no one's really expecting you to have all the experience in the world. They're just making sure that you're enthusiastic and you have a good baseline of like, you're smart enough to pick it up. When you talk about mid-management and like 5 to 8 years of experience, then you kind of have to talk about like, what kinds of experiences did you have? Are they relevant? If not, like what the heck is going to be your story, which is totally doable, by the way. But that's where your past experiences get scrutinized a lot more. And that's why that 5% is a bit different, because you do have to craft a different narrative. You have to be able to talk about your accomplishments in a way that, hey, here are the problems that I helped solve, and here's what I'm looking for in my career as the next step. So there's a little bit more rigor that's placed there, but by and large, in terms of like the 5 steps that we just talked about to apply to a job, there's pretty much the same thing. To give you an example, my brother and I at our respective companies, I think more so for him, we see upwards of 1,000 applicants for a single position. So if anything, it's magnified when you get to roles that are less so open for college students and more so open to everyone.
What would you say for more than that, 10 to 20? The profile of our students is that our MBA, MPA students, actually, sorry, I don't know what the actual school profile, but the ones that cross my path are, they usually have good jobs and they're going for promotion. They're getting their educations to move up in their company or something a little bit more finitely focused. Like it's more, not necessarily a sure thing, but you know, it's not like I'm getting this so that I could put myself out there and you know, but so that's why my question was like for the 5-6 like undergrad who left school and then came back. What, but just in case, what do you say for the 10 to 20 year?
Funny enough, I've coached a couple of them as well. I would say it's basically two things that matters, oddly enough. Actually, I should say three things. Number one, what have you accomplished in your career and how do you brand yourself, right? Do you have a specific niche that you're known for? Or like, you know, for example, you're an aspiring COO in the financial tech industry. Like how do you think of yourself, right? Because by then you would have had some formative experiences, right? Yeah. Secondarily, do you have relationships with headhunters? Because at that level, but typically companies, you know, go more formal. They have a faster need to hire. They don't have giant talent pipelines at universities feeding them candidates. So sometimes it can be hard to find those specialized roles. And so getting to know recruiters in any field, I think is a good exercise to do. I'm starting to do that myself. And then thirdly, and most importantly, it is who you know. I can tell you without a doubt, the people that I've coached get their jobs either through headhunters or because they have a reputation in the industry that they're in. And as long as they want to stay in that industry, it's just going to be friends of friends saying, oh, you know, you left Netflix. I have a friend over at HBO. They're looking for a marketing person. Why don't you go interview with them? And that's how a lot of these jobs get filled, particularly at the senior level. So kind of to recap, it's making sure that you are able to talk about your experiences intelligently. Number two, it's your brand and who you are and really what types of problems you're looking to solve. And then it's also, you know, relationships with recruiters and headhunters and that sort of thing, and reaching out to them on LinkedIn, which you can totally do. And then lastly, and most importantly, it's the network that you build. And it's being cordial with people, helping each other out, helping your peers out, even when you don't need help, so that when you are looking for a job, you can kind of ask them and say, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. Do you know anyone that's looking to hire? And you'll be surprised at how many opportunities show up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I think to just kind of put it concretely, if you think about like a university executive, a healthcare executive, any kind of executive, I just don't buy that they're uploading their resume on a job portal. Like it just seems weird. I think they have a reputation, they're well known in their industry, and I just think that that's how it goes. And that's why we literally teach that same method to students and those baseline foundational principles. And what we tell them as I kind of age up with them in their 20s and 30s is like, you're just going to see this stuff prove out more and more in your life. So those kind of foundational skills, Elizabeth, especially if you can get really good at it, they're going to carry you for the rest of your career.
Thanks.
Cool. Good questions, though.
Mm-hmm.
Any others, Eric? Anyone else? Do we have a couple minutes? All
Not
right.
that I can think of.
Laura, I'd be curious if maybe you, myself, and Eric can offline on this. If there are specific questions that you feel the MBA cohort might have or the graduate student cohort might have at NDNU, I'd be happy to do another webinar that was not previously scheduled just for that group, if you think that would resonate more, and talk more about kind of some of the struggles that they might be facing, whether it's a career pivot or wanting to get promoted internally. Those are all things that I help students out with. So happy to do that if that's of interest.
Yeah, I think I'll see. Actually, you know, Eric, who's a good person to talk to, is Dana, to see her insight on that. But yeah, when I talk, the very brief, like casual conversations or whatever that I had there, they're like, oh, I'm thinking about this. I want to move this. And it's usually like internally or say like related, like this company that we work with all the time. They've been, you know, something like that. But you're right. I don't know that they're necessarily on the track to get there. They're just like step one is having this MBA. I don't know that it's like any, yeah. So that would be super useful. Yeah, Elizabeth, did you have anything else? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack the question Q&A over to like to graduate students and stuff.
Elizabeth's getting some personal coaching from all three of us today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of like, you know, I'm just kind of a beginner in like career stuff in general. So like, you know, I'm in general more of a listener anyways. So like, you know, it's just good to like, I don't know, it's like even from this sorry,
Web-
this
webinar.
this
Well,
meeting alone, like it's given me a lot of like good information. So yeah.
Awesome.
Good. I strongly encourage you to actually do those modules, you know, over the winter break while you have the time,
Mhm.
because that'll actually get you back on track to get all, you know, the information prior to graduation, so that you can start putting those applications out prior to your graduation date, and so that you can hopefully have something in line before you get your diploma.
Yeah.
That'd be the goal. Elizabeth, we also have a new feature that we rolled out. I think Eric's familiar with this. We rolled out office hours in the Facebook group. So basically, Calendly link, and students can sign up for a 15 to 20-minute session with me at any time in that calendar kind of schedule. And so if you have specific questions about your situation, happy to chat about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, Elizabeth, it'll be good. Sorry, I know everyone's
Yeah,
talking at you.
it's okay.
But,
It's all right.
I think it was maybe the second, it might have been even the first or the second. Sahil goes over a lot of like how to talk, key phrases, things to say, how to approach people. He gives like email scripts and actual like face-to-face scripts and stuff. I'm sure they're repeated in the modules as well, or I'm sure he repeated them. He repeated what's in the module in his presentations, I should say. But I found those like extremely useful and poignant, as opposed to just being told, you have to do this, you have to be this way and that way, and just like, exactly how does one go about doing that? Or he gives you like
Mhm.
scripts that you could practice and then make your own. It's useful and different than other sort of training programs.
Yeah, thanks for that call out, Laura. So certainly in the previous webinars, we talk about that. In the online course, you'll walk through some of the templates, whether it's how to reach out to someone on InMail, how to write a cover letter or resume, or what to say in an interview, or how to phrase it. And also, Rohan and I are mindful that we give you the templates, but we also want to make sure you're making it your own. And as an English major, I'm sure you'll find problems with some of our templates, but that's okay. And yeah, I think that's the takeaway, exactly what Laura said. You know, it's important that you kind of understand how to present yourself in the best way. I think that's the biggest skill that college students can learn. Again, it goes down to telling their story and getting people to want to help them. Great. All right, everyone, I think we're at time. I unfortunately have to run as well. So what I'll do is, as always, Eric, I'll save this down on my local drive, upload it to Google Drive, and to everyone listening now and in the future, this will be made available on NDNU's site with all the other webinars. And we will have the next one in January.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great holiday break.
You, Sahil.
Yeah, you too.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye.